Hi there, my name's Rutal and I'm here to talk to you today about Ohmforce's distortion plugin, Ohmicide. What makes Ohmicide different to other distortions is that it is a multi-band distortion. It also has built-in compression and expansion altering parameters and some very interesting stereo shaping parameters as well, which we'll talk about in a bit. In this tutorial I'm going to take you through a track I'm working on at the moment and show you how I like to use Ohmicide as a creative tool. This first sound already has some delay and reverb on it, and what we're going to do is try and accentuate that effect and create some deeper textures in the sound that will bleed out through the mix. I've set Ohmicide up on a bus as we just want to send a small amount of the signal to it. The reason for this is that I personally like to have the gains on Ohmicide up quite high, as I think you get a more full-on sound from it that way, which picks up the harmonics. The gains are located here. The fact that Ohmicide is a multi-band distortion basically means that you can affect different bandwidths, which are different areas of the frequency spectrum. Here's a built-in spectral analyzer so you can see what's coming through mostly. These four groups of parameters here correspond to each bandwidth. Here's our next lead. You can see here that there's a very small amount of bandwidth selected for the mid-range section, from around 500 Hz to 600 Hz. The reason for this is that we want to have the antipole distortion selected, which is quite screamy and is picking out the tones in this bandwidth really well. It's shaping them differently to the other selected bandwidths. Let's take a listen to each bandwidth in turn by soloing each one. The top bandwidth here is the overriding distortion that is giving the settings its character, while the mid and low tones are creating some more ambience. Altogether, we can hear that it's creating new spaces and shapes in the mix, but it's a little bit in your face for this style of track. If we add in the delay, reverb and sidechain that is also set up here, we will see that this new layer begin to blend in with the source sound. So let's hear these two leads in the mix. Next up is our vocal, and with this sound I want to highlight some of the frequency spacing and shifting facets of Ohmicide. If you look down at the bottom of each set of parameters, you will see the controls for spread and the controls for side. If we alter these, it will change the shaping of the stereo image, altering what frequencies are panned far left and right and what stays dead center. If you play around, you can shift things in fun and interesting ways. We mentioned the bandwidth settings at the top before, the crossover points for each bandwidth. If you move these around, you get some very interesting shifting frequencies. I've assigned these controls to a MIDI controller and automated them to create some frequency modulation, and as you can hear, it's created some very unique and spacious sounding modulations. In the mix, it's definitely switched things up a bit and made it sound a little bit more fresh. The final thing we're going to focus on in this tutorial is the drums. Here we're going to look at the gating parameters on Ohmicide, located just under the band selectors. Let's just turn Ohmicide on and quickly go through the bands to see what is going on with Ohmicide. The second band here has the gate threshold set quite high. This is ducking out quite a lot of the signal and allowing only the loudest transients to punch through, creating quite a cool staccato effect. On the one side we have fat, which means more compressed and therefore pushing up dynamics for a louder effect. On the other side we have sharp, which is expanded and more selective of the dynamics, giving you a potentially shorter release time in the sounds it generates. Again, we have the top parameter taking the brunt of the sound, as we want to capture the splashy high-end crunch of the break and use Ohmicide to highlight it and spread it out over the mix. There's a very tiny amount of gating, but just enough to keep it tight. For the effect we're trying to create, I've added in a high-pass filter over the top, and underneath we have the same audio of the drums being low-pass to keep a similar feel of the overall drum sound. Both of these sounds are now being sent to a reverb bus to glue them together. Well, I hope you found this tutorial informative. It's been brought to you on behalf of 16 Steps for Ohmicide. If you'd like to check out any of our blog posts or future tutorials or courses, then please visit www.16steps.co.uk.